Wholesaling apartment buildings. Can you do it just like you wholesale houses? What is similar? What is different? Can you use a $10 earnest money deposit? What contracts to use? The terminology, knowing what to say. Well, I'm going to discuss this and a lot more. Also, how you can partner with me. And some of you that are watching this right now are already sitting on a gold mine, a serious 5 or 6 figure payday. So you know what you need to do. You need to simply stand by. Let's get it.
Text me and I'll text you back. Text me and I'll text you back. Text me then I'll text you back. You text me then I'll text you back. You text me then I'll text you back. TikTok, you don't stop. I will help you make your paper stack. Where you at? Where you at? Where you at? Where you at now? 205-964-52439. Yep. 205-964-52439. You know.
Hello guys, this is Ty, aka the Flip Man. Wholesaling apartment buildings. I have talked about this in a few videos on my YouTube channel over the years. This is the most recent video that I'm doing for a couple of reasons. Number one, to open your eyes, even if you've already started wholesaling houses, or even if you've never wholesaled a house before, you still could possibly get right into this side of the business. Also, some of you all are already sitting or involved in an opportunity and don't even know it. So in this video, I'm going to share with you the entire process, which you still will need to do a little more homework on your own, but this is going to be a tremendous foundation for you to get started. So you're going to have an opportunity, if you would like, to partner with me so we both can make money after going through this video. That'll be at the end also. Now, I'm using a PowerPoint slide to share this information with you. Also, at the end, if you want a copy of that, there will be an opportunity for you to get a free copy of this particular PowerPoint if you would like. So, before I get into it, make sure you like this, share it, subscribe to my YouTube channel, tap the little bell, select all, so you are alerted whenever I upload new videos like this one and when we do our daily lives. Don't forget to also follow me on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter at Ask Flipman. So remember, stick around to the end. I'm going to give you an opportunity to partner with me. Also, if you're possibly sitting on a gold mine right now, I'm going to share that information with you. And if you want a copy of this PowerPoint slide, you'll have that opportunity at the end also. So now on to the video. Okay, so let's get into it. Wholesaling apartments. Now the intent of this is it's going to be, I guess, a mini training. You should be enough to make you dangerous. And as I said in the opening, you're going to have an opportunity to possibly capitalize on something you already have going, or an opportunity to partner with me. As I said, this would at least make you dangerous, at least open your eyes up to some things you may not have known, or make and look at it in a different way. So let's go through some of the things we're going to actually cover here. All right, we're going to compare wholesaling houses to wholesaling apartments. What are some of the similarities? Then we're going to go through what's the biggest part of it, what's not similar to wholesaling houses. What makes apartments commercial real estate, finding deals. She's the slash here for off markets, who to avoid. You see the slash there for online for sale. I'll explain all of that. What contracts to use, the time frame and due diligence that you'll actually have them under contract, the earnest money deposit. $10 won't work like it does on houses in most cases. How to evaluate the properties, the raw numbers. Throughout this, you're going to learn the terminology and how to talk the talk. So that'll also help you with when you're actually having discussions with a particular owner, maybe even a real estate, commercial real estate broker, at least you'll know what you're talking about, or sound like you know what you're talking about. And when something is thrown at you, you should know what it means. Now, of course, you want to do your additional research after this video, but this should give you a great foundation to fill in a lot of the holes through some other resources. You may be sitting on a payday and you don't know it. All right, and I'll explain that near the end of the video, and then how you can partner with me at the very end. Okay, so let's see what's similar between houses and wholesaling apartment buildings. The only thing that's really similar is when you have a seller in the contract and when you have a buyer on the contract, the process is basically the same of you getting paid, either through an assignment of contract or possibly a double close. Now, the differences are significant, all right? From the evaluation process to a lot of times the prices that you're dealing with, the type of buyer that you're dealing with, how it's paid for can be different. So it can be totally different as far as that process, and that's where most people get hung up when they start to try to pursue wholesaling apartments versus wholesaling houses. Okay, but we're going to get into that and explain all of that for you. All right, next thing is what makes multifamily or apartments considered commercial real estate. Now you have your duplexes, your triplex, fourplex. You know, those are self-explanatory. Duplex is 2 units, triplex is 3 units, fourplex is 4 units. 5 units or more are considered commercial property or commercial real estate. That's important because a lot of times how a property could potentially be financed by a particular type of lender. But I think they're just a basic thing that you just need to understand, and also how you evaluate them, that you need to understand is what makes multifamily commercial. At what point does it become considered commercial real estate and not residential? All right, finding deals off market versus what I consider on the market or listed properties or online. My definition of off market, and some other people may have different definitions, but my definition of off market is if it's advertised anywhere on the internet, it is not off market. Whether that's on some of the known sites like Zillow, CoStar, Crexy, any of the residential sites, sometimes you'll see apartments for sale there, or in a Facebook group, wherever. It doesn't matter. If it's advertised anywhere where the internet is being used to supply that content or that site or a source, I don't consider it off market. And then I'll explain why that's important to me later on. You can do whatever you want, but I'll explain why. All right. Listed online for sale. One of the reasons, well, a couple of reasons why, when a property is already listed for sale, now we're just talking about wholesaling now. Just understand this is all coming from a wholesaling perspective. There are a lot of other ways to do real estate. That's one of the great things about it. But this is all coming from a wholesaler's perspective, at least mine anyway. When a property is already listed for sale, that's even with houses, you lose a lot of your superpowers, especially in commercial. They really don't play that game. If something's already listed for sale, it could be more trouble than it's worth when you're trying to move those. They say LoopNet is where properties go to die. Now, of course, people do deals on there all the time, I'm sure, but that's just a little saying that's used in the commercial world. But what I mean by losing control is that once a property is listed, a lot of times it's been shopped around so much, and it's some of the same people you're reaching out to potentially be buyers, even if you could get it under contract, even if you could negotiate a better deal. A lot of times they won't take a second look, but you can always find what I consider a lazy buyer. They just want you to feed them deals. Now, we all want those. If you come across some of those, please share. But generally speaking, a lot of times those properties are shopped around so much. On top of that, even if you get it under contract, sometimes the agent will refuse to or not be open to removing the listing altogether. They'll just change the status to pending, because what that shows for them, a couple of things. They can also get a backup offer if you don't close, but also shows that they can make things happen. If it's pending, that means an offer has been is in the process of being, well, probably been accepted, and they're in the motion of potentially purchasing it. But again, and the second thing, like I said, is that it allows them to be able to possibly pick up backup offers. So those are the things that, while off market and listed, are so important. It sort of bleeds into houses also, that same mindset as a wholesaler. Now, again, it can be done. I'm not saying it can't be done. It just makes it a lot more difficult. All right, so let's get into the paperwork. So contracts. So no, my one-page contract will not work for commercial real estate, period. So that's multifamily, self-storage, hotel, motels, industrial, warehousing, retail space, office, medical, it doesn't matter. My one-page contract would not work. And in most cases, most residential contracts would not work for commercial. They're totally different. The verbiage and the terminology, and with commercial, you have so many different types. The terminology or the verbiage needed in that agreement just won't work. And you say, how can I find those contracts? Now, Google is your friend. There's going to be templates out there that will give you that option to pick your own contract. But I will recommend, the bigger the project, the more likely you'll need to hire a commercial real estate attorney to draw up one for you. Now, if you're just getting into this, you may not be able to afford this, but if you're one of the individuals that's watching this and you're trying to transition from wholesaling houses or whatever you're doing in houses, and you've made some money, so it wouldn't be an issue to pay an attorney to draw up you a standard agreement. But the only thing about commercial, though, that one agreement may not fit the next deal. In reality, you may have to get an attorney to draw up contracts each time you want to put something on a contract. Now, on the flip side of that, if it's a situation where you're dealing with a broker, a commercial broker, a lot of times they will draw up something also. So it just depends. But the main point is don't get laughed out of the building by trying to present my one-page contract, or really any residential contract, on a commercial piece of real estate. All right, the time frame as far as whenever you're negotiating your deal or submitting an agreement, you want a 60-day minimum to close. The bigger the project, you start to get into 7-8 figures, you're normally going to want more than that to close. That due diligence period, which I'll get into in a second here, is going to be lengthy. The due diligence period could be longer than 60 days without even thinking about it. So the bigger the project, the more time you're going to need. Under $1 million, and again, this is all negotiable. Ideally, you want probably 60 to 90 days minimum. Anything over that, you probably want maybe 90 days and more. It just depends. Sometimes the deals can be so good, you can say a 30-day close or whatever. If you think you can pull it off, I don't recommend it, but it's possible. If it's a really, really good deal and they exist in commercial just like they do with houses, that may be that what makes put the deal together, because of the speed of it and how fast the owner may want the money. So now with the due diligence period, 30 days a minimum in most cases. Again, the bigger the deal, the more due diligence you want, because the more money spent, the more is at risk. So you need more time, or your potential buyer needs more time to evaluate it. And a lot of times with the due diligence period, that also gives you an opportunity to be able to find a buyer before earnest money is potentially lost. All right, we're talking about earnest money deposit, EMD. All right, now the $10 like houses will not work. Generally speaking, 1% is standard, but everything is negotiable. So if you're dealing with a property That was $1 million. Normally 1% of that is 10,000. Again, you could probably get away with a $5,000 earnest EMD. It just depends. If you had proof of funds to go along with it, wherever you source that from, that'll go a long way on it. So, but again, at the end of the day, it's all negotiable. So there's no standard on it. But $10 is definitely not going to work in most cases. All right. So what if you don't have the earnest money deposit? Well, you just need to hit me up and we can partner on it. We'll make that happen. I'm just going to leave that answer. It's just simple as that. Okay, so just hit me up and we can partner on it if EMD is an issue. But when doing that, obviously I'm going to be a part of the deal, but I wouldn't put it up unless I thought it was a real opportunity. All right, next, how to evaluate and things you need to know. All right, so let's get into the real bones of this. All right, so obviously you need a price, and sometimes they won't give you that, and that's why you'll need to collect a lot of this information I'm about to share with you to come up with an actual offer. But price, you got to have that to even possibly put a deal together. But at some point, whether you're making an offer or they give you a price, and you could possibly make a counter offer if the numbers don't work. All right, so you'll need to know the number of units. That's self-explanatory. How many actual doors, as they say. Occupancy rate, meaning if you got a 50 unit building, how many of them are rented? Out of that 50, is it 32? Is it 100% occupied, meaning all 50 are rented? That's very important. A lot of times that's important because it may create an opportunity for a value add situation, meaning that you may come across a 50 unit building and only 28 of them are rented. So that's 22 units. That's potential income. Now, the numbers still have to work to make sense, but that's 22 units because it might be just mismanaged. That's a significant number of units being vacant on 50 total units. All right, the unit mix, meaning just simply how many 1 bedrooms, how many 2 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms, obviously the baths to go along with that. It just gives you an idea of what potential income can be collected based on the rental rates for that particular area within a market. The rent rolls. The rent rolls are simply each unit outlined, who's the tenant, how long, what are they paying per month, what type of lease are they on, how much time is left on the lease, is there a deposit being held in that amount, the rent rolls. All right, a trailing 12 or T12 as they call it. And the trailing 12 is basically the last 12 months of financials, last 12 months of actual gross income and expenses, trailing 12 or T12. The profit and loss statements, generally speaking, normally you want to get at least the last 2 years. Now, sometimes depending on where it falls, the trailing 12 may take care of one of those years, but even with that, you may want to go back really 3 years. Like if you're in the month of January, so that would cover all of the previous year as far as the trailing 12. But then you still will want to get the 2 years before that. Okay. So the profit and loss statements can bleed into the trailing 12, but ideally, if that's the situation, what I just explained, you'll want to get at least those 12 and 2 more before that. All right. The age of the roof or roofs, depending on how many buildings we're dealing with, are very important because that's a cost that could be extensive depending on the size of the property, the number of units and the number of buildings. Any recent updates, that helps. That could be to your advantage. And negotiations on both sides of it. If they haven't touched it in years, it can be to your advantage. A potential another value add opportunity by doing the maintenance or updating the property could increase the rents because now it looks a lot better. It's more desirable. Deferred maintenance, self-explanatory. What utilities do the tenants pay? And obviously what the landlord would be responsible for. Gas or electric, it may be a combination of both. Maybe a combination of them, but that's important. Again, that'll fall into the utilities that the tenants pay. And sometimes water may fall in that category where sometimes the owner will pay all of the water because whenever the property was constructed, that they were not separate separately metered, which could, a lot of times that can be a deal breaker in itself if the landlord has to pay the water versus the tenants paying their own water bills. And then it can still be subdivided amongst the tenants evenly, which is somewhat not fair, but sometimes landlords would do that. Okay, so heating and cooling, that's going to be important, especially depending on where you live. How are they heated and cooled? Sometimes you want to know the age of those units for each door, each particular unit. When I say age of those units, meaning the heating and cooling units. And you might want to associate that with each particular rented space, rented apartment. All right. And then you want to know the current mortgage or lien status. Sometimes they may not owe anything on it, which opens up to a potential of easier owner finance situation. Sometimes they'll have a mortgage that may be assumable, and then they may have some liens attached to it. Hopefully they'll be transparent with that up front, but it'll all come out regardless. All right, so now those are a lot of the things that you'll just need to know to see if there's an opportunity. Now, so we'll get into the actual numbers, but also this should have helped you with a lot of the terminology here. So if you need to go back through this part of the video, please do. All right. So do you have a deal or not? So the things that you'll need to even start to determine that. We mentioned the P&Ls, the profit and loss statements, like we said, the trailing 12, the rent rolls, the last 2 years of financials, excluding the trailing 12. Then you want to have, which that will include the gross income annually, gross expenses annually, which that'll give you the net operating income. And then we get to the capitalization rate. I'm going to explain all of that here in a second. Most people will purchase, I say most, a lot. Well, I probably would say most. Most will purchase based on a capitalization rate. And again, I'm going to explain that here in a minute once we get into the numbers. All right. And then some people would just simply buy price per door compared to what other properties of similar type in similar type areas have sold for. They just basically solely on that. Well, not solely on that. That's the number one parameter that they're going to use to make the purchase. Okay, so let's get into the numbers. Deal or no deal? Okay, all right. So we got our gross income minus the gross expenses to give us our net operating income, which is the NOI, and we divide that by price. That give us our cap rate. Now, the market cap rate, you can speak to brokers in that area, and they'll give you an idea about a property and what other properties are selling for based on cap rate. Okay, so, and as I may have mentioned earlier, with the cap rate is basically, if I bought this cash, which a lot of times they're not, but what will my return be on this annually? Okay, so, and whether you know if you have a great deal or not, you compare to what other properties similar to yours that you're targeting are selling for. That lets you know if you have a great deal or not. All right, like with anything else. If this person bought it at this price and I can get it cheaper, I'm going to have a great deal. Okay, so let's run the numbers. So the gross income per year is $84,000. The gross expenses are $32,000. If you subtract that number from the $84,000, that leaves a $52,000 net operating income or NOI. If we divide the price that's being asked, we'll say the owner is asking $725,000 for the property, then that gives us a 7.2% cap rate. I think it's actually 7.17, but I rounded it up. Okay, so if properties in that area are selling at 7% around that number, then they're basically trying to sell it at full price. For you as a wholesaler, that does you no good. But let's just assume that you can negotiate a price. And as you see here, same numbers, you can negotiate a price at $500,000. Now that raises the cap rate up to 10.4%. Okay, so now you're talking about something that's almost like a 3% change. That's huge in the commercial real estate world if you can get that type of return. Now, there may be some other factors here, but just going on these numbers right here based on the same information. If you can get that, if the NOI is 52,000, you can get it for 500. You get a 10%, 10.4% cap. You have something. That's something definitely we need to talk about if you're going to work with me. All right. So let's show how you get paid though. All right. So now, whenever you've the property's under contract at $500,000, but you're going to market it at 600,000. We'll just say you maybe market at 650, but just for the sake of this, you're marketed at 600 and you get 600, right? Because I normally like to ask for more than what I'm willing to take, but in this situation, you ask 600, get 600. So look at that cap rate now. It's 8.7. I think it's actually like 8.666 or something like that. So, but it's 8.7%. So you remember the original cap rate was 7.2%. That's still like a 1.5 difference, which is again huge in commercial real estate. All right. So what does that equate to you? You have it under contract for 500,000, but you can sell it at 600,000. That means $100,000 payday for you. That's how it's done. So when you say, well, what's the ARV how can I determine the ARV on some apartments? As you see, it's not done the same. Now, remember also I said, even though we went through the cap rate, sometimes buyers will buy based on price per door of similar type properties that are sold in that particular market or area. Okay, so let's get to the good part here. You could possibly be sitting on a gold mine. And what do I mean by that? If you, a girlfriend, a boyfriend, relative, friend, coworker, church member, or whatever, are renting from an individual that is also acting as the landlord, you could possibly be sitting on an unbelievable opportunity to do a deal. And what do I mean by that? You may have an actual relationship with them to know enough that they really are tired landlords. And you may know that the building or property, it could be a house also, but we're talking about apartments. You may be living in a 30-unit building and only 12 of them are rented. That's possibly a tired landlord, and it's definitely being poorly managed. So that's possibly an opportunity where we could partner on that. You don't have to deal with me. You have enough information here. You may be able to put it together. Now, they may not would deal with you directly because you're renting from them. They may have some form of perception formed about you that they probably shouldn't, but it's just what it is. So they may not want to deal with you directly. So you may have to bring a friend or someone in, a family member, whoever, in that they don't know that you know to approach them about buying it. And it may be a situation you could have a 5 or 6 figure payday sitting there and don't even know it, and possibly even ended up owning the building if you wanted to, depending on what's negotiated, but reaching out to them and see if they're interested in selling it. Like I said, you have the inside track. You know what's going on with the building, you know what type of person or landlord they are through conversations. They may have already told you that they would love to sell that building or get out of the business. Their kids don't want it. There may be a health or medical situation. The actual landlord that you've dealt with for years has passed on. Now the wife is dealing with it. You know that's really not her thing. So you'll have an inside track that a lot of us won't, as investors or wholesalers or whatever, would know. So it may be a unbelievable opportunity for you. That's why you're sitting on a potential gold mine. And I said, it may not be you, just may be someone that you know. So whether you want to deal with me or not, just you need to take that and run with it if that's your situation or you're aware of a situation like that. But I would prefer that you partner with me. And it's really simple. And what we need, all right, you are dealing directly with the owner. It's off market. You already know what my definition of off market is. So what I'll need is the address, hopefully a video. You know what? I hold your camera correctly. You hold it vertical and not horizontally. You hold it horizontal and not vertical, and take some photos if that's all possible. And then just text me over at the 205-964-5243 and let's partner up. So boom, you're still here. As I promised, If you want a copy of this PowerPoint slide, all you have to do is simply text the word doors to the number 205-964-5243. That reply text will give you access to it. And if you would like to learn how to build a list to target motivated sellers, tap the video that you see on the screen now, and I will see you on the flip side.